Welcome to We Make Children's Books, the podcast that takes you through the imaginative minds of children's book authors and artists. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com. And in today's episode, we're excited to have with us the award-winning indie author, Reiki master teacher, certified shamanic practitioner, and children's book author, Sarah Woodard.
It's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And we were talking before we went on the air. You now, in a previous interview, you said that your job, what you want to do, not your job, your goal is to produce 300 children's books.
Correct.
Wow.
Yes. And just for the record, I did not pull that number out of my behind. That is how many books Richard Scarry published. And I think he's pretty amazing. And I want to be at least as amazing as he is. Right. So, or was, I should say. But yes.
It's a way to just kind of give people a little bit of a kind of a history, how you got into writing all these books.
Sure. So I won't tell you my entire life story because we don't have time for that, but I do need to roll back to childhood for just a quick second. So I know it doesn't seem like it now, but I was very, very shy as a kid, like to the point of would not talk to my parents if there was other people around. Okay. We're talking like painfully shy. And so for me, recess at school was a lot of me sitting alone on the playground, talking to the rocks and the plants and the trees and the bugs and whatever. And it took me a long time to grow out of that. I mean, I'm almost 42. So it took me a while to come out of that, but it became a very important piece of my story as a human because as I found my voice, which was partially, a lot of it was through working with spirit, I also felt the need to give a voice to nature and the trees and the rocks and the plants and anyone really who doesn't have a voice, right? Minorities and all of that. And all of a sudden, now that I have my voice and I can roar, I want to roar for everybody, right? And so that's kind of how that started. But the spiritual piece of it became very important because that was how I found my confidence and my purpose. Because we all have a purpose, right? But most of us, like we're born knowing it. But by the time we get to be adults, we've had so many other societal things coming at us that we have completely forgotten whatever it was. All of my spirit stuff kind of brought me back to that center, to that purpose. It took me a while though, because at first it was like, well, maybe I'm supposed to help other people do this same thing that I just did. And maybe it's about healing animals or healing nature or this or that. But what I found out was all of that for me felt really niche-y because you have to kind of keep your conversations about that thing that you do. I want to roar for everybody. I want to talk about all the things. And the only way to talk about all the things was to write. And it made total sense because in like third or fourth grade, before I had all of the societal messaging tell me that I had to be a certain way and do a certain thing, I wrote an essay about why I wanted to be a writer when I grew up. So I was kind of just coming home to my roots, just like moving to Vermont. I feel like I just came home. Like Vermont picked me. I didn't pick Vermont. I never thought I was leaving the house I was in. My plan was to live there forever. And I was sitting with spirit saying, but how do we get these books in hands? They're beautiful. And I'm so grateful for the words. And I'm so grateful for my illustrator. But if nobody's reading them, they don't change anything. How do we get books in hands? And it took me a long time to really accept that I was being asked to move. But once I did, it was like, oh my God, what was I waiting for? I love Vermont. I should have been here all the time. I mean, I don't love everything, right? You're never going to 100% love everything, but that's why you get involved and try to make a difference, right? Whether it's, and you vote, right? And you do those things that you can do as a grown-up to try to change things in ways that matter.
Do you see this role as a teacher kind of being expressed as well as writing these books?
For sure. Yeah. I'm definitely like, my soul is an educator, but my expression is a teacher, is a writer rather. My heart was in the right place wanting to teach high school special ed. My skill set, my abilities, my sense of humor, not what the job requires. So I did. I graduated with my degree in special ed and my degree in social science. And I walked across that stage and I took my diploma and I never used them again.
How do you balance different roles of being an educator, but also an advocate? Because a lot of your books also have an advocacy piece to it as well.
So I would say they're not the same role, but they are connected. You can't advocate for something if you can't also teach about it, because a big piece I have discovered of being an advocate is meeting people at their current knowledge and explaining the truth, whatever that is, right? Mm-hmm. And hoping they change their minds, because you can't ever force anyone to change their mind. But hopefully, if you have an open-minded person in front of you and you present them with information that's new, or present what they know but in a different way, they will change their mind on their own. Mm. So the two go hand in hand, but they are different roles.
Right.
And some advocates do things that I don't do, right? Like they'll go and march in the streets. That's not so much me, but they will do that. And they're just as much an advocate, maybe not as much a teacher. Right. Some teachers teach in the classroom and they just teach the curriculum that they're told to teach, and they don't question whether or not it's actually valid, because that's their job, is to teach it. That's a teacher, not an advocate. But they can go hand in hand, and I personally think that they should.
And so let's look at your list of books that you have out here so far.
The giant list.
The giant list. So I guess the question is, like, we have a lot of authors that listen to it or watch this program. Their question is like, how are you able to make these
so fast?
So fast, yeah.
No, and it's a valid question. It totally is. And first of all, let's recognize these are not 1,000+ page novels, right? Those are obviously going to take longer, because there's just literally more typing to do, right? I mean, never mind, all of the other work involved. There's literally just more words to type. So they're of course going to take longer. But also a lot of it really goes back to my process, right? Because a lot of writers fall into this pattern where they carve out a time of day and they go and they sit in front of their computer, or they sit with a notepad or whatever it is, and they force themselves to try to write, like NaNoWriMo, right? That's what that's all about, is sitting down and forcing yourself to write a certain number of words. I say that's not valid. I say that's actually stamping on your own creative abilities, because that comes through. I don't care if you call it working with spirit. I don't care if you call it your muse. Call it whatever you want. But that only comes through when you're at ease, when you're relaxed, when you're comfortable. This is why in college, I had a roommate who, if she was writing an essay and she got stuck, she would take a shower. There was some nights she'd take 3 showers in one night, but she'd finish the damn essay. Because taking a shower relaxed her enough for her brain to go, ah. And then inspiration comes, right? You're singing and driving in the car, and all of a sudden you get inspiration, or you think of something or whatever, right? That's why that happens in those moments. Because you're not forcing your brain to try to do a thing.
Right.
So I don't do that. I get inspired. Usually it means I got pissed off about something and I'm literally sitting in my house, like reading something on social media, cursing at my phone as if it matters. And then I say, okay, if that's a book, I will be ready for it when it shows up. And I will be doing something completely unrelated, like making tea or having a shower or driving in the car or feeding the cats or whatever it is. And boom, the book shows up and I have to go, okay, either like I literally one time I got an inspiration for the book. I actually got the inspiration in the shower, like as I was starting the shower, and I'm like, okay. And I literally said the first line or two that was in my head over and over again out loud, walking through my house, finishing showering, drying my hair, putting on clothes. Then I sat down and typed, but I said it out loud over and over again so I wouldn't lose it between then and when I could sit down. But I do try to stop immediately and catch it, because otherwise it can leave, right? But right. It usually comes back too if it leaves. So it's not the end of the world, but it's frustrating.
Right.
Because I'm just like open and ready to catch the words basically when they show up.
Right.
It goes faster because I'm not pressuring myself. And my illustrator is freaking amazing. And he was doing 2 pages per day. He just recently figured out how to do 3 pages in a day. I don't even know. I can't even imagine. I can't draw anything. So I can't even imagine illustrating 3 pages in a day. So they'll even be coming faster, which is amazing because I have a backlog of about 33, I think. Yeah, thereabouts. Because I think my editor just finished going through number 64. So
Okay.
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's your team, your editor and Carlos Lopez.
Yep. And obviously Spirit. Yep.
And Spirit. Yep.
And the plushies and the cats. Yeah.
Yeah. So the question before we went on the air, you're talking about how Carlos's work is part and parcel. It's very much identified.
We have not met in person. So when I say married, I don't actually mean we have rings on each other's fingers, but we are married in the sense of professionally, I think. Yeah.
Right.
First of all, his work is very distinctive. They have a certain feel to them that's very different from most of the other work out there.
Right.
People, if you're scrolling through social media and you come across that, you're going to know it's mine before you stop and read it. He also has a very similar process. Like I sent him the text for the book. He sits down and reads it. And then he does yoga or meditation or however it is he taps into his version of whatever spirit is. He gets the images that way. I very rarely have to change anything. And when I do, it's because I'm going for realism in some way. But generally speaking, I don't have corrections. I don't have changes. I just go, wow, how'd you do that?
How did you find him in the first place?
The magic of the internet. So, freelancer.com, maybe one of those sites. I don't even know if they still do this because he and I have been working together since 2017. But back then, they let you do this thing where you could run a contest and you basically set the terms of the contest.
Okay.
So I had uploaded a couple of pages from my first book, Adri's Big Dream, and said, I wanted people to submit sample illustrations and they would win. I forget if it was $20 or whatever they would win. And also the opportunity to work with me on future books if they won. Some of the stuff I got back, I'm telling you, I can't draw stick figures that look like things, but I could have done better than some of these things I got back. I just fell absolutely in love with him, with the work. He won the contest. He won the money, and we have worked together ever since.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And he must be happy to be working with an author that is...
Well, it's amazing for him because most freelancers, right? And I'm a freelancer with other things. We get paid when we get paid.
Right. Yeah.
But because it was very clear, the first few books, I just paid him when the book was done. But after a while, he kept, he started to get more comfortable with me. And he started, every once in a while, he would message me and say, hey, do you mind just paying me for what I've done so far? I need to get groceries or whatever. Of course, I don't mind.
Right.
I totally get that need. Yes, you have to eat because if you don't eat, you can't keep drawing. So selfishly, yes, I'm happy to pay you.
And did you have to set up a contract or anything with him? Did you?
People probably should. I'm never going to advise you not to, but he and I did not. We just innately trust each other.
Right. Yeah.
You're not going to find that all the time. I highly recommend doing things with contracts because things happen.
Right.
And
so talk about how you your inspiration. You say it comes in without expecting, and how. So are you the kind of person who will have kind of a notepad next to your bed or something in the car, or how does that work?
I used to, but I actually have a really hard time sleeping. I've never been a good sleeper, even as a kid. The rule was you have to be in bed by this time. As long as you're quiet, you can do whatever you want. So I got really good at just being quiet. And I was a reader, right? I read in bed I still read in bed every night. The only way I can fall asleep is if I read in bed. So because of that, I stopped keeping a notepad by the bed because if I get that inspiration in the middle of the night and I wake up to write it down, I'm awake.
Okay.
I am awake. And so by removing that notepad, I also kind of created a boundary with spirit because you are allowed to have boundaries with spirit. You're allowed to have boundaries with every single being.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. All these books, because you do mention, you compare it to the point of also like the, Richard Scarry, where,
Yes.
The busy world. So
yes,
everything was kind of intertwined, like you had reoccurring characters going through.
yes. So his are different in that regard.
Okay.
All of mine stand alone. There are no intertwining characters. Although I will say, if you look carefully, sometimes the characters repeat in illustrations.
I was going to ask you, are there any Easter eggs for people that are...
There are Easter eggs, and I'm not going to tell you where they are. But sometimes a character in one book comes back as an illustration or a piece of an illustration in another book. Okay. Just saying.
Do you have any, working on it, like say, like any sequels to any specific characters that you're just not done telling about? Wow,
yeah. So I have not actually announced this on my community yet. So you guys are hearing it first here.
Wow, okay.
On Storycomic Presents, you're hearing it first. Get ready. So Ellie of the Woods, the whole premise is she is a child of the forest, and she's raised by nature. And one day she has to leave her woods and go out and do healing in the world, right? And that story literally was being illustrated as I was moving to Vermont. I didn't even know I was going to move when I wrote that book, okay? But Spirit knew. Yep. Spirit knew. And I have realized since being here that Ellie and I are the same. She is me, I am her, and her story is my story. And it does continue, but not as a children's book. It actually continues as a series of beginner chapter books. So for the kid that's not ready for a full-on novel,
cool.
The full, like the picture books are a little too babyish, like that in-between stage. Right now there's 3. They're not out yet. I don't know when they're going to be out yet, so don't ask. but right now it's a series of 3 that continue her adventure. And they sort of mirror what I know my journey so far, at least what I know about my journey and where it's going and what I personally need to work on in order for that to happen.
Right.
So yeah, that one continues.
Which one are these stories that just kind of like flew off the page for you? Like it didn't take you much. And which ones kind of, you said, like your editor friend said, you got to tweak it a little bit here or there?
Well, they all always have tweaks. Right. I mean, in part because, as any writer will tell you, we all have our one mistake that we make every single time, right? And no matter what we do, we think we're doing it the opposite way, so therefore it's going to be right, and we still do it wrong. Like, we all have that one thing.
And yours is punctuation, right?
Mine is punctuating dialogue, specifically.
Oh, punctuating dialogue, okay.
Specifically, it's punctuating dialogue. I don't know what my mental block is about it, but literally every single thing that has dialogue in it has been tweaked because I just can't seem to get it right. This is why we have editors. Thank God for Abby, because I swear. And I always, when I email her the things, I'll always be like, FYI, there's a lot of dialogue or whatever. But I actually I refer to it as like a birthing process with the books, right? And some of them are like that really easy labor where it's like, oh, did I just give birth? And some of them are like, oh my God, I was in labor for 72 hours and it was hell the entire time, right? It's funny, like they say you forget labor pains. I wouldn't know, not being a mom, except to cats, but they say you forget labor pains. And I feel like that same thing happens with the books. I will say, graduated with 88 kids in my class, very small school. Nobody had freedom to be themselves. So I actually wrote a story that is about a Jewish girl and her sticking up for herself and her heritage and her religion. And it's really actually it's like my true life story, but I posit it as fiction in this children's book. That one, I felt it like spinning inside my body for probably a solid 1.5 years. That one was probably the hardest one to get on the page. And I don't know if it's because it was just my story and so personal or what it was, but it took me a long time for that one to break free. I actually talked to this woman that I only know through Instagram who does a lot of coaching for multicultural families about how to honor all the cultures involved in in both, whatever their heritage are. And she's also a children's author. And I was like, I need your help. I can't get this story out of me and I need your help. And just talking to her helped free it up for some reason.
what's my question? What is your oldest story that hasn't been made into a book yet? Like, do you actually have a script? They're like, I'm going to wait for this one. I'll wait. I want to tell Carlos to do this one first. Do you have one?
So yeah, I definitely don't go in chronological order of how they were written. I was for a while, and then I realized it didn't always make sense to do that. So the one that's the oldest, I forget how far back it dates, but the one that's the oldest and hasn't been published yet is actually about the rainforest, and specifically about how our desire for all things palm, which people don't even realize, it's in everything. Palm oil is in food, it's in beauty products, and people think, oh, it's palm, it's vegan, it's plants. No, it's not, because you're destroying the orangutan's habitat and killing them at the same time. And I saw this image on social media of a mother orangutan pushing against this big bulldozer thing that was tearing down all the trees, trying to save her baby. First I got mad, then I cried, then I wrote a book. So, I don't know when that one will be out, but I know that when the time is right for it to come out, it will come out.
Right.
That one's definitely the oldest.
So you came out with, as we say, it's your most recent book that came out was Tommy's Transformation.
Yes.
And before we went live, you were talking a little bit about its story.
Yes. So Tommy is a transgender turtle, and yeah, everyone, like, not everyone laughs, but the thing is, you don't know. There could actually be transgender turtles. Have you ever talked to a turtle? You don't know. There could be. But even if there's not, it's a kid's story. And the point is to help them understand things. And so, yeah, so Tommy, he's born in a male body, but he identifies as Tina. And when he's a little boy, he starts to wear his sister's clothes because he likes how he looks in the mirror as a girl. And as he gets older, his parents start to get all like, that's not okay. Like, take off those clothes, behave yourself, whatever. But he gets upset and whatever. And thankfully, his parents are aware and compassionate enough to send him to a turtle therapist. And the turtle therapist explains to Tommy that what he's feeling is totally normal, because some turtles, are born in bodies that look different on the outside from how they feel on the inside. And that's okay. And that he needs to tell his parents and so that he can be respected for herself at home. And still being Tommy in this moment, gets very upset. And so the turtle therapist helps Tommy / Tina tell his / her parents. And from that point forward, she is allowed to be Tina and identify as female, because that's what makes sense to her.
There's not a lot of children's books that kind of like talk about this.
No, there aren't. People feel like it's too complicated for kids, but it's funny. I've been divorced longer now than I was married. But when I was married, one of the things that when we would get into a fight, one of the things that my ex-husband used to say was, Sarah, you see the world and it's so black and white. And to me, it really is black and white. And I don't think that's a bad thing, at least for my career path, because kids see it as very black and white too. It is or it isn't. It's right or it's wrong, right? This is why every kid story has a princess and a prince and like the hero and the bad thing that the prince has to fight off to save the princess, right? It's very misogynistic, but there's the good versus the evil. Even adult movies, right? There's always the good versus the evil. Well, that's black and white. That's a very black and white view. Could there be people who are meaning well and do bad things? Of course. But in a kid's world, you're either a good person or you're a bad person, right? You're a stranger or you're not. Kids break it down into that very simple, that's where their magic lies, right? Because they see it so black and white, they can look at an adult and go, yeah, but you're telling me it's wrong and you're doing it anyway. What? Right? And the parents are left going, because there's no way to answer that, because they've literally broken it down to that black and white thing. And so as much as I'm sure it frustrated the hell out of my poor ex-husband, yeah, to me, it is very black and white.
Right.
Gender is not. Gender is very fluid. But the issue of whether or not people are allowed to identify however they choose to, that to me is very black and white. The answer is, of course they can. There's no question about that.
So Sarah, where can people find you if they want to like learn more and just want to read more of your books?
Sure. So my social media, I'm on Instagram and Facebook and Pinterest, and all of that is Sarah Woodard authoress, it's my name, Sarah Woodard, and then it's author and then ESS, authoress, like goddess or princess.
Okay.
I feminized it. And then the books are all on Amazon for people who are not local to the Brattleboro area. But if you are local, you can also find them. We've got some at Everyone's Books, and they can order any of them. If there's something you want and you'd rather go through them, they can order any of them.
And you also have a Patreon account as well.
I do. Thank you. Yes. Oh. So this is actually my biggest marketing challenge right now. We were talking about marketing earlier, and my biggest marketing challenge is a lot of people don't know what Patreon is or why it matters. But if people want to support the work, please do buy the books. But if you want to support the work and for whatever reason don't feel compelled to buy a book or whatever, Patreon is an amazing option. I highly recommend the $7 a month level because there's coloring pages.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
But and whatever level is always appreciated.
Right. Yeah, you got some really nice levels on here too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, yeah.
I'm so excited to be able to sit down and chat with you, and come back on next time.
I would love to.
Yeah, next when any of your books. I mean,
just literally pick a day because I'll have a book coming out within a time. So literally pick a day. I would love to. This has been really fun. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.